Welcome back, warriors, to Never Settle, the podcast designed to move your mind while you move your body. We have an inspiring and motivational guest today on the show, Holly Glasser. She is an actress, model, and CEO of MITH Magazine, which we'll get a lot more into in this episode. Holly, thank you for taking the time today to be here to talk with us.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Where are you located and what are you doing right now?
Currently, I am in New York City. I work as an actress, model, the CEO, and I also have a fashion boutique as well that I'm working on the side, which I started recently.
Busy entrepreneur and talent. You know, you have quite a history in acting and modeling. And when I was looking at your resume, it is incredibly impressive for how much you've done. The list goes on the scroll page that you sent me. What has that journey been like?
You know, it's so funny when you hear someone say you've done so much because, you know, when you yourself look at your own resume, you're always more critical and, I've hardly done anything because, you know, you're always thinking of a certain standard you're trying to reach. I started out doing extra work in New York City, and then that evolved into some bigger roles. Started out with short films after extra work, and then that built to some indie films. And then I was in Teenage Ninja Turtles 2 in a scene with Megan Fox, and then went to LA, did an indie film recently, and had, I think, 5 pages of speaking lines. And that was a big deal for me because that was the longest I'd ever done. So yeah, when you say I've done a lot, you know, I've never really been a guest star or co-star on a television show yet. I didn't really push that hard, but I was just having fun mostly. So the things that I have on my, yeah, I like that, you know? And so I think if you really want to book the bigger roles, you have to work harder for it. But I was having fun just doing the smaller things. To me, I was satisfied in my life for the most part. But sometimes, you know, I have bigger goals that I want to reach. But other times it's nice to kind of, honestly, I like having more of a private life, being a micro influencer. It's nice.
You bring up many great points, but 2 that are really standing out for me. 1, you are having so much fun with doing. That, I think, opens the doors for more opportunity because people see it. They see it in your face. They see it in what you're bringing on camera and film, especially because you're creating. And the other part that you mentioned is about pursuing what really connects for you. Tell me about MITH Magazine. We'll get into fashion later, but tell me about MITH Magazine because it's a very cheeky acronym. So tell us what it stands for.
MITH stands for Modest is the Hottest. And yeah, I moved to Los Angeles after being in New York City for 3 years, and I wanted to explore the acting and modeling field out there. And I was actually in a casting director's office for Ballers HBO. And I made friends with the girl at the front desk. We ended up going out to lunch at Lemonade in LA. And it was actually a friend of hers found me on her Instagram and scouted me to start the magazine with him. First, after hiring me for his first fashion film. And then we had so much fun doing this that we decided together to start the magazine.
What does the magazine stand for?
So MITH, being modest is the hottest, is all about inner beauty and tastefulness. And we focus on stories of actors, models, singers, and dancers, fashion designers who really reflect that inner beauty and knowing their worth and identity, and also being leaders in their community, giving back. And all our editorials, such as our fashion editorials, are all tasteful. So we have conservative guidelines for modesty as well, tasteful, nothing too revealing. So that really forces us to look within ourselves. And that is the most important. And the thing that causes us to be most beautiful comes from that inner beauty. So MITH is all about light and radiance that starts in the heart. And then those stories of those who are actually doing something to make the world a more beautiful place, shining their light from the inside out. And that really helps me find people that I want to feature when I'm looking for people who come from the heart. I want to know someone's heart. They can be beautiful to look at, but I want to see that it's also the inner beauty. You know, mind, body, soul is really important when I'm featuring someone.
So true. And I love what you say. You stand for that in every degree. You see it and feel it. If you're listening, you'll need to check out the video version of this because you see it. What I want to ask and go a little bit deeper on, what is it that you personally do? What is it that you personally do for your own inner beauty? Because you're gorgeous on the outside as well. But what do you do for your own inner beauty?
I do a lot of self-reflection. I'm very honest with myself, sometimes a little too critical of self, which is something I'm working on
There's
a
a
little.
balance there, no? There's a
Yeah,
balance.
there is. I can be very hard on myself, a little bit of a perfectionist at times. So I'm also working on being gracious to myself, forgiving self also, not holding a lot of shame or condemnation or guilt because I hear the cats in the background.
I don't know.
Have grew up in somewhat of a culture of shame where I was raised with a very stringent rules and guidelines. So learning how to have my own sort of rules in my magazine, even, I have to make sure that I don't come across as judgmental as well, which I have been called judgmental before. So to be really honest, that's something I'm working on internally because I realized I was judging myself a lot, so therefore I was judging others. So really having to spend a lot of time working on myself to know my worth and identity so that I can love all people the same and not come across as condemnatory in my language, especially because what I'm doing, it's like, okay, modesty. And there are a lot of women who don't relate to modesty and want to be more revealing and show off their bodies more. And I'm more on the other spectrum of that. So really learning how to navigate that territory as well, and speak in a way that's showing this is what I stand for, but I'm not here to put someone else down for their specific way of living.
As being in the spotlight, models, actors, and also high driven entrepreneurs, I relate a
Mhm.
lot to what you're sharing. How do
Mhm.
you quiet that judge, that inner judge, the inner voice? Because you're correct, and it's when you judge yourself, it's a lot easier to judge other people, and what standards we hold for ourselves then creates standards for the rest of the world. So what tools are you implementing to share with any listeners?
Yes, to really quiet that voice of judgment, you really have to have a lot of grace and mercy for yourself first before anyone else. You have to look at your mistakes that you've made and forgive yourself. That is so important. You have to know your worth. You have to know your identity. You have to wake up every morning and say, you are beautiful, no matter what anyone says about you. You have something to share with the world. You are valid. You just need to look at yourself and speak life over yourself every single day, no matter what environment you were raised in. Because my personal background, I wasn't always encouraged in my gifts and talents, even as a child, or hearing that loving voice to affirm me from those who were supposed to protect me. So I had to learn to know that for myself. And I'm also faith based. I believe in God, and so knowing His truth has filled my heart with a lot of that worth and self worth and confidence that comes from knowing that I am a beautiful creation, and regardless of my mistakes. There is still love even for all of us when we've made mistakes. And then the next part is learning how to move forward from your mistakes or your flaws, and learning how to basically sometimes even use them to your advantage, to tell a story. Say, okay, I used to be this way. I was always the most improved award winner in any sport I played, because I always started out really bad. But I would listen, and then my teacher would tell me, okay, do this, and then I would get better, and he would say, you're the best improved. So I really think the story comes out of that, of people seeing, okay, we made these mistakes, but then hearing how we overcame. And so I really align with your mentality of the warrior spirit, the overcomer, and the go-getter, and the winner, and the achiever, and using those things that were setbacks and turning them on their heads and making those things our strengths as well.
That's beautiful. And there's so much of what you just shared. So to backtrack a little bit, you use a lot of mantras and visualization exercises,
Yeah, def-
meditations
definitely. Yes.
for rewriting the story of a childhood message, which is where a lot of our, I love you, mom and dad, but it's where a lot of our traumas happen. And it doesn't have to be mom and dad. It can be school, environment, our own stuff. So it's reworking a lot of the story that you were told younger, doing a lot of rewriting. And the
Mhm.
story that you're sharing of resilience and one of almost redemption for being the
Absolutely.
most improved, that's interesting.
Yes.
I think that's one of courage and strength, because to
Yes.
really, to be given, I remember in high school, and it was like most beautiful eyes and like nicest
Mm.
voice. I think you got the award of the school because really to be, the most means that you worked and you were courageous enough to not stay where you were. I love that one. I don't think I'm
Mm.
going to have to write to my high school. I don't think you had that one, but I would have liked that one.
Funny you say that because I don't know if you've seen the movie Secretariat of the Racehorse. I always love movies about like the one in the back of the race who was always the worst and in the end won the race because
Oh, yeah.
I feel like even when I was a little girl, I was not necessarily mentally handicapped, but I remember gymnastics and I could not do some of the things that other girls could do as a 5 year old, 6 year old. I could not do a left sided cartwheel and I could not do a split the same way. And so, I'm not really sure even to this day what put me behind a little bit some ways physiologically. I learned out later my hips turned in, but I think all of us in some way have maybe something that we don't love about ourselves. All of us have some sort of little insecurity. Maybe we don't like the way our nose is, or maybe we don't like the way our legs turn in slightly more than others. But it's learning to truly love those parts of ourselves, to love even our flaws. And then when we do succeed, when we finally learn how to do that, arabesque, whatnot, then we've worked, like you said, we've worked so much harder for it. And so it's something even more to celebrate for because it was just a little more of a challenge, and it shows like the human resilience of just being, we're created to be achievers, we really are, and to not let those things keep us back.
It's that mindset of being limitless and exactly the message, overcoming adversity and finding that inner beauty, which
Yeah.
is MITH Magazine. I love
Yeah.
that. I love
Yeah.
that. What would, being models as well. And like I said before, as an actress in front of you are constantly judged.
Hmm.
We are constantly judged. And sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with us why we're rejected. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
too tan. Maybe you have brown hair and they want blonde. And it's like, how do
Hmm.
you overcome the stigma when there is critique? Because that's a hard thing to accept, to say, you know what, this is me. And that goes back to the inner beauty.
Hmm. The overcoming the stigma part is really knowing that each and every person has their own beauty, and different people are meant for different things. There are some models that were tall and created for the high fashion runway. I'm a petite model. I'm only 5'2". I have a high gum line when I smile, so I show more gum when I smile. So I would not necessarily be a smile model, but it's still funny because my smile is one of my favorite things about me, even though it's not commercially standard, right? So I've learned to love my smile despite it not being necessarily up to par with what you might consider a teeth model. But it's really knowing that, okay, knowing your place. There is a place for everyone in this world, and we each have our role to play. And it's finding your specific niche. So for me as a model, being 5'2", I know there are certain campaigns that I will never be hired for because of my height limit, or certain jobs I will never book because of, maybe my smile isn't quite right for that. But, I can hand model, I can shoe model, I can foot model, you know what I mean? Or maybe they want to see my ear up close, you never know. Ears can be money makers too. So the model is there to show excitement for a specific product, to get other people excited about it. So, yeah, I think that you just have to know where you belong.
Agree. It's in business terminology, it's about double downing on your strengths, and that's exactly what you just shared. You shared some really great insights there about finding your niche, leaning into that space of this is me, and this is
Mhm.
where I can make the most impact. Leave the financial part out of it. There might be a lot of people who are listening and saying, "Oh, she's only 5'2" and she's modeling." Well, that's exciting. How did you get into modeling?
I came to New York City in 2012. My background, I was actually a Spanish major from North Carolina University and North Carolina State. And I was a Spanish teacher and interpreter, and I love these jobs. But in my young to mid 20s, I really wanted to be more creative and travel and have adventures. And I thought modeling and acting would be really fun. And no one had ever particularly told me, oh, you're so beautiful, you should be a model. Not really. I just thought it would be a fun career that would allow me to get to travel. So I came to New York and started taking photos with a few photographers that I met along the way. And I put a portfolio together and approached agencies at their open model calls, and I got rejected my first time. And then I took better pictures and went back 6 months later, and one agency accepted me, and they were a great agency. And from there, I started submitting to projects on my own as well from various websites. And you'd be surprised. I mean, I it was so much fun because I'm like, can I do this? I don't know. And I started booking things, and it was really an adventure. It was really fun, and I still do it. And it's been, wow, almost a decade, and it went by so fast.
Again, it takes courage. It takes courage, and it can be very easy to, say, oh, well, she's a girl, but it's beyond gender. It's beyond, what the profession is. You are
Yeah.
a strong, strong character.
I will say, Sarah, that I've been through a lot of trials that most people don't know about, things that tested me over and over and over. I would say I've died and been reborn. I've been reborn multiple times in the last 7 years, and each and every death, it strips away a part of this weakness, and you become stronger. And I really do feel like I'm a warrior, so I really gravitate towards the language you use, because my spirit is fierce now. And I used to, when I first came to New York, I was just a fragile little, you know, wide-eyed, full of wonder young girl. But now I'm a woman, and I'm fierce. It's true. But I think there's also a dichotomy there, because I try to stay tenderhearted and fragile as well. Fragile in the way of loving delicately, forgiving fiercely as well. So it's like to forgive fiercely is also a tenderness and a fragility as well. So I try to have that duality in my nature.
It's a beautiful balance to have, and it's owning that femininity with the inner spirit of, it's my podcast, so I'm just going to say it as it is, but I have a phrase that says, do no harm, but take no shit. And that's exactly,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm sensing. You're too polite
Mm-hmm.
to say it, but that's that's how I say it. I'm like, her.
Sometimes I have a mouth sometimes when I'm by myself. You know what I mean? It's like that. Yeah. I'm just going to be honest.
If you are open to share,
Yes.
in your business ventures, what has been one of the hardest struggles that you have later maybe overcame or did not overcome?
There's so many. It's certain people that you thought you had their support, that were your protectors, were family, friends, lovers, who did not end up being your supporters and your protectors. And this was something I never expected. And things came up out of the blue in the last 7 years in my career, where I was confronted with really deep trials of certain people that I really loved, that showed me that they did not love me back, including family, friends, and a man that I had been in love with. So this was very stripping and humbling, because, to be honest, a lot of my modeling and acting career in the beginning, I recognized subliminally that my motive for what I was doing was to be loved more and to be accepted more, especially because I didn't really get that as a child. So I thought if I reached a certain level of success or obtained a certain level of, achievement, that I would be more loved and accepted by the ones that I wanted to love and accept me. And when I realized that there was nothing I could do to win their full approval, that's what drove me to my knees, and I sunk to the floor. And that's when I died and was reborn, because it no longer was serving me to do those things for that motive. I had to have a different motive. And from that death, my favorite quote, Sarah, is, when they buried you in the ground, they didn't know you were a seed.
I got chills when you said that.
I got chills the first time I heard that, because that is my life in a nutshell. See, dun, 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 in a nutshell, literally, I feel like I am a seed in a shell that is growing into a tree. And it's only from being buried that I came back up, and am becoming, now truly flourishing and blooming, and now bringing others along with me, because I want a forest. I don't want to be the only tree standing. You know what I mean? So,
Wow. Okay. You, and ladies and gentlemen, warriors who are listening, she is an oak tree. No,
Yes,
no little palm tree here. It's like the roots of an oak. My goodness. And that
that's
she
exactly
wants a
the tree.
forest. I
I,
love.
I'm so touched that you can see that because that's exactly the tree that I resonate with, the oak tree.
Did you do
That's
any visualizations with that one? Well, it shows.
ab-
Yeah.
absolutely. I've had actually a dream where I saw an oak tree, and I do have a lot of dreams and things. My mind is very creative. I sometimes do poetry and I draw with chalk or just colored pencil. Sometimes what I'm seeing in the, before me in the creative realm, and to help me verbalize and share with others what I'm seeing in the spiritual journey, right? Because if we can show others in a physical way what we are experiencing spiritually, it really helps bring it to life.
It really does, because you're starting to visualize it, one, for yourself, but also to put it out there for others to see as well. And then it doesn't just become a thought, because a lot of people go around, they're like, yeah, I have a lot of dreams, but a dream is just a dream until you actually put it into action. So
Absolutely.
an action is the drawing, it is the writing, it is the sharing with someone, it is the visualization within the dream, and share exactly what you said, and that brings it to life. So what is next for you? What is next for you in these dreams into action?
That is an interesting question because I do feel like now, after about 10 years or so as an actress and model, I am transitioning a little more into holistic healthcare because I went through so many personal trials that tested me mind, body, soul, that now I want to incorporate something holistically, healthcare wise, for the artist especially, to help them thrive long term, right? Some kind of therapy and also treatments, because something I have noticed is burnout, right? Because we as artists sometimes have so much pressure on us and are criticized so much, or sometimes we're even the judge of ourselves or others, like we mentioned earlier, and it can be very draining and exhausting, and we might not always have the support of those we love, and we also might just grow up and want to start families ultimately. And but if we want to be lifelong artists and not burn out, if we want to thrive long term, then we really need to make sure we are taking care of ourselves. And I will admit to you, Sarah, that is something that I did not do when things hit the fan. You know what I'm saying? When life got hard, when I didn't always have the support that I felt that I needed at the time, I had to look elsewhere. And I didn't take care of myself emotionally, physically, and spiritually for a while as much. I was neglecting eating full meals sometimes. I would skip meals. I would be stressed. I wasn't sleeping. It wasn't on purpose. It's just when you have so much going on internally that others can't see, you tend to neglect yourself sometimes. So now I am being much more intentional about my healthcare, my meals. And I noticed that's something you do as well. You're so intentional about healthy eating. And I think that's awesome. I really respect and admire you for that because it's not easy and it takes self-discipline. So incorporating a lot of self-discipline into my life, not just my career. And that's the thing, Sarah, because I was doing all these things, but I wasn't doing anything for myself to make sure I could survive. So there was a little bit of burnout. So I would say for the artists to thrive long term, they really need to learn how to slow down and pace themselves and make sure they're not neglecting their emotional, their spiritual, and their physical health. And if you really take the time, sometimes you have to go a little slower and you can't do every little thing, but you'll notice that the opportunities, even if they're fewer and farther in between, they're richer. And then you put more of your heart and soul into the things that you do end up doing instead of just staying busy. I am really against the idea of just busy, busy, busy on the go, 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 grind, grind, the hustle, the
I'm
bustle.
cheering her on. I'm like, yes, I hate that word busy. It's like awesome. I can fill my calendar with walking around in circles too, but oh, I'm cheering you on.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just stay busy, and it became an idol in my life where it forced me to not have to look at the other things that were going on. And so there came a point where I no longer could survive if I was going to ignore the other things going on inside. So I'm like, okay, breathe, time to really focus and heal and let go of a lot of things and let some other things in that I was not allowing emotionally, spiritually, making sure you're not believing lies about yourself. And when you strip away everything, that's like the root. That's like the bulbous root of that seed of the oak tree. I mean, an oak tree can't grow strong unless it has deep roots. So you have to make sure that your foundations and the pillar of your soul are rooted on truth. Because if you have even just one little lie about yourself, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not talented enough, I'm not smart enough. You have to find that lie and you have to just rip it out so that you're not growing like a twisted branch, you know what I mean? Because I had some twisty branches and I had to cut them off and throw them into the fire. And so now I'm getting some pruning done, some fine tuning, some honing, what you call it, a fire diamond, and going through the fire and becoming out more dazzling than before. And that's a scary process. And that's where the courage comes from, because it takes a while to get up strength, because it hurts to have things ripped off of you. But until you're willing to go through a little bit of that stripping, you will never really grow.
Some power. I can't even follow up with another question after that powerful close. So I really, usually I close with, what is it like to settle? But I think you just let it go there. It's to stay in the weeds. And you, my dear, are a beautiful flower meant to blossom, to grow into that gorgeous oak that is awaiting you, that you are continuously watering every day. It's beautiful to see. Holly, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Holly Glasser, just HOLLY Glasser, GLASSER. Yeah, I'm on IMDb as well. If you want to see my film and TV credits, they're nothing huge, but I had fun. So there's that. And then MITHmagazine.com, MITH for modest is the hottest. MITHmagazine.com. I am as well on Facebook and Twitter with my name, Holly Glasser, and then Twitter is Holly_Glasser. So you can find me on all of the major social media platforms.
She's being modest, as her magazine calls for. But I think we have in all of this a course coming for Warrior University as well, with a lot of the overlaps that we're doing and what you just shared. So stay tuned over there on Warrior University. For those of you who are listening, thank you for tuning in. We're going to drop all of those links below in the description that Holly mentioned, so you don't have to remember. You can, of course, go back. That gives us another listen, so thank you. And Holly, a huge thank you to you. You are a beautiful soul inside and out. You are a true power and force and the definition of resilience. Thank you so much. She's back. Thank
you, Sarah.
you. She took a momentary pause. She getting more water.
Yeah, phone decided to shut down slightly then.
That's called a siesta, ¿no?
Yeah, una siesta.
Se llama una siesta. Entonces, buen fin. All right, we're going to close out, Warriors. Thank you again for tuning in to Never Settle, the place for inspiring content that moves your mind while moving your body. See you in another upcoming episode.